Today I'm going to be taking a relatively cheap piece of meat, a chuck roast, and I'm going to turn it into something closer to a ribeye in 3 simple steps. Season, sous vide, sear. If you don't have a sous vide, I suggest getting one. It outweighs most of the other kitchen devices by a long shot. These things are not that expensive. As you're gonna see, I don't even have the bin that it goes in. I just use pots that I have. It generally works out for everything that I'm doing. It takes any kind of recipe and it can make it that much easier to nail it every single time. Out of all the kitchen devices that you have, this should be at the top of your list for things that you need to make your dinner better, simpler, and if you're ever doing large gatherings, these things can save the party. We are going to transform this piece of meat from a tough, slow roaster to something a lot closer to eating like a ribeye. You have all this intermuscular fat. You have these fat strips in here that are going to render down. When we're done, we're going to chill it and then bring it outside and we're going to sear this and get a nice crust on it. This is going to be an awesome steak and not a chuck roast by the time we're done. First things first, we're gonna season it. And for the seasoning, we're gonna keep this fairly simple. We're gonna do garlic powder, fresh ground pepper, and salt. Fairly simple, easy to do. Start off with the salt, give it a nice coating. This is a really big piece of meat. It's gonna take a lot of salt to get all the way inside and penetrate that meat. Pepper. Again, it's a rather large piece of meat.
That's what she said. That's what who said? I never know. I just say it. I say stuff like that, you know, to lighten the tension when things sort of get hard. That's what she said.
Don't be too shy when you're doing this. Then, garlic powder. If you want to change up the seasoning on this, do whatever you want. Doesn't matter to me. I'm doing this because I'm just going for common things that you're gonna have. I wanna know what this tastes like without too many things impeding on the flavor of the beef. Pick up all this stuff that's on the board. Now there's gonna be a separation of muscles in here. Be careful not to start to tear this, otherwise we can't turn this into a steak later on. I'm gonna tie this so it doesn't fall apart. If you don't have butcher's twine, you can totally skip this step. I'm doing it to make sure that these pieces of meat don't fall apart. I created a little loop inside of this so that I can put the other end through this. Again, you do not have to do this step, but I'm doing it for the sake of trying to keep this together as one giant steak. I'll pull that taut, wrap this back around. All right, then find that loop again, send this through that loop, pull it, tie it off. It's gonna hold this together beautifully. Next step is I'm gonna be putting this in a vacuum seal bag. Then from there, I'm going to be putting it in the sous vide bath. If you don't have a vacuum seal, doesn't matter. All you need is a Ziploc bag big enough for the steak, and then you displace it by closing it almost all the way, dipping into the water, and once all of the air is gone, finish sealing it, and you got yourself a vacuum seal bag. I'm gonna take one extra little step. You likely don't have this, but if you ever get the chance to, make your own smoked beef tallow. I'm taking a scoop of this and I'm putting it in here. It'll help add to the richness of the steak and give it a little bit of a smoky taste from this. Just a chunk of it on a spoon. Just gonna plop it in there, top of the steak, and I'm gonna let that do its job. If you wanna learn how to make smoked beef tallow, I have a YouTube short. Check out the video right here. Quick, simple, easy to do. And from here, all I'm going to do is take it, put it in my sous vide bath. I'll see you on the other side, and we're gonna sear this up, and I'll let you know how it tastes. "24 hours in the sous vide at 135, then I put it in the fridge, open air, to cool down and to dry off. Then I threw it onto the smoker. I let that come up to temp for about 45 minutes. Then I threw it onto the salamander grill to get a nice dark char and let that Maillard reaction do its job. Now I'm gonna shut up so that you guys can enjoy the footage of this beautiful steak. All right, I'm gonna show you how to cut this. First, we're gonna be removing the string that was holding this thing together. It's mostly charred, so it kind of just came right off. Make sure all of it's gone because you don't want to eat any of that. There's gonna be natural separations in this meat, seeing as it's a chuck steak. So you follow those natural separations, pull it apart, and then each individual piece of meat, you're gonna find that the grain is gonna be running a different way. So you're gonna wanna see that and make sure that you're cutting short grain with this. The grain of the meat's running this way, so you're gonna wanna turn it this way and cut into it this way. Perfectly colored. You can tell just by cutting it that it's nice and tender. What you didn't see off camera is me taking this out of the bag. I saved all of the juice from there. Now when I plate this, I'm pouring it over that. And then a little bit of finishing salt. Then you have yourself a fantastic dinner for cheap. Grain on this is running this way. So the crust on this is so crunchy. Letting those flames actually hit it makes a world of difference than just having the heat underneath it. Now, if you don't have a grill that can sear like that, use a cast iron. Get that thing screaming hot where the smoke is coming off of it. A little bit of tallow in there, and it's all you need. Let me cut it in half this way. All right, final piece. $135 for 24 hours in a sous vide. Then I let it cool down. Then I smoked it. Then I seared it. And then I cut it. And then I'm gonna eat it. So that's a full chuck right there. A little bit of finishing salt, truffle salt. Some chives for color, some of the juice for dipping, and all right. That literally falls apart. Perfect flavor. People would never know it was a chuck. They would think that this is a ribeye. As long as you cook it properly and you serve it cut up, you can get away with fooling your guests. Remember, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Follow Smoke on all the various social medias. Check out my merch store so you can have awesome clothes like me. And see you next time.
You really think you can go all day long? Well, you always left me satisfied and smiling, so.
That's what she said. Jim?
No thanks, I'm good.
That's what she said. Pam?
My mother's coming.
That's what she said.